What if the letter that ended your marriage was only the beginning of something far bigger, something that would expose arrogance, reward kindness, and flip your fate in a single day? Before we begin, a huge thank you to all of you. We've officially hit 500 subscribers. It's a small milestone, but a big deal for us. And now our eyes are set on the 1,000 subscribers goal. To help us get there, please hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss a story, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Your support truly encourages us and keeps this channel going. Now, let's jump into the story. That morning, Stella Wright stood motionless in her small kitchen, staring at a court envelope lying on the table. The room smelled faintly of cold coffee, untouched since dawn. The official seal of the County Domestic Relations Court glared at her like a verdict already decided. Her hands shook as she opened it. The words blurred as her eyes scanned the page of divorce summons. The hearing was scheduled for the very next morning. Her chest tightened. 3 weeks ago, her husband Ethan had walked out without explanation. No goodbye. No discussion. Just silence. Once, he had been the man who shared instant noodles with her while studying late into the night. Now, as his career as a rising attorney soared, Stella felt like she had become invisible. Her phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. You received the papers. Be on time tomorrow. Don't argue. Don't make this difficult. No greeting. No emotion. With trembling fingers, Stella replied, asking for answers, asking what she had done wrong. The response came fast and brutal. I've moved on. Look at me now. I'm successful, respected, and you don't belong in my world anymore. Taking you to events would embarrass me. Each word felt like a blade. Stella collapsed into a chair. Memories flooding back, working late nights, sewing clothes to pay his tuition, encouraging him when he failed exams, making sacrifices without complaint. And now, he called it obligation. Another message followed. At the hearing, agree to everything. The house, the car, the savings, they're mine. You didn't contribute anything that matters. Her heart sank. The down payment on that house had come from her savings. But Ethan knew the land. He knew how to use it as a weapon. That night, Stella packed a small bag. She had no access to money, no car. She would take the city bus to court in the morning. As she zipped the bag closed, she whispered to herself, I won't fight him for money, but I won't let him destroy my dignity. What Stella didn't know was that one simple act of kindness the next morning would place the most powerful ally of her life right beside her. The next day, on a crowded city bus, Stella would help a stranger without realizing he was about to change everything. The morning air was already heavy when Stella Wright reached the bus stop, her small bag slung over one shoulder. She kept her eyes down, trying to ignore the quiet stares from neighbors who already knew too much. In a town like this, bad news traveled faster than kindness. The city bus arrived late, coughing black smoke as it screeched to a halt. It was crowded, standing room only. Stella hesitated for a second, then stepped inside. She had no choice. The smell of dust, sweat, and old metal filled the air. She gripped the overhead rail as the bus lurched forward, her knees wobbling with each sudden stop. Her mind replayed the courtroom. She was about to face Ethan in his tailored suit, confident and cold, ready to strip her of everything. At the next stop, the doors creaked open again. An elderly man stood outside, struggling to climb the steep steps. His hair was snow white, his clothes plain and worn, and his hands shook as he reached for the rail. Hurry it up, the driver snapped. We're not running a charity. The bus jolted forward before the old man was fully inside. He lost his balance. Before anyone else reacted, Stella pushed through the crowd and caught his arm just in time. The old man gasped as she steadied him, using all her strength to keep him from falling backward. Careful, sir, she said softly. A few passengers glanced up, annoyed, then looked away. Stella guided the man toward the priority seats. They were all occupied by young riders glued to their phones. She cleared her throat. "Excuse me," she said firmly to one of them. "Would you please give up your seat? He can't stand." The young man sighed loudly but stood up, muttering under his breath. Stella helped the old man sit. Only then did she step back, her arms trembling. "Thank you," the man said, his voice hoarse but sincere. "You saved me." She smiled gently. Anyone would have done the same. But the old man studied her closely. Her simple dress, her tired eyes, the sadness she tried to hide. "Where are you headed so early?" he asked. Stella hesitated, then answered quietly. "The courthouse." The man nodded slowly, as if he already understood more than she had said. "A place where lives change," he murmured. The bus rattled on through traffic, and for the first time that morning, Stella didn't feel completely alone. She had no idea that the stranger she helped because of pure instinct and kindness was about to walk straight into the courtroom with her. By the time Stella reached the courthouse, she would discover that the man she saved on the bus wasn't just an old passenger, but someone her husband should have feared most. The courthouse loomed ahead, tall and cold, its stone walls pressing down on Stella Wright's chest as she stepped off the bus. She adjusted the faded scarf around her neck and took a slow breath. This was it. The place where her marriage would officially end. Beside her, the elderly man leaned on his cane and glanced up at the building. "Looks heavier than it really is," he said calmly. Stella offered a weak smile. "That's how everything feels today." Without asking, the man walked alongside her through the metal doors. The security guard barely looked twice at him. To everyone else, he was just another old man in worn clothes. Inside, the waiting area buzzed with quiet tension, whispered arguments, muffled sobs, the shuffle of paperwork. Stella sat on a hard bench, twisting her fingers together. The old man sat beside her, calm and observant. "You don't have to stay," Stella whispered. "I don't want you caught in something unpleasant." He smiled gently. "I've lived long enough to know unpleasant things shouldn't be faced alone." Before she could reply, the sound of sharp footsteps echoed down the hallway. Stella stiffened. Ethan had arrived. He walked in confidently, dressed in an expensive suit, a leather briefcase in hand, his colleague trailing behind him. He didn't look around. He expected the room to make space for him. Then his eyes landed on Stella. "Well," Ethan said loudly, his lips curling, "you actually showed up." Stella stood slowly. "I'm here because the court asked me to be." Ethan laughed. "Let me guess. You took the bus." Figures. He glanced at her clothes with clear disgust. "This is exactly why this marriage is over. You don't fit my life anymore." His colleague smirked. Ethan shoved a folder toward her. "Sign this now. You walk away with a small settlement, and I keep everything else. Fight me, and you'll leave with nothing." Stella's hands shook, but she didn't take the pen. "I won't sign," she said quietly. "That house is partly mine." Ethan's expression darkened. "You think you have a choice." That's when he noticed the old man. Ethan waved a dismissive hand. "Hey, old guy, this doesn't concern you. Move along." The elderly man didn't move. Instead, he lifted his cane slightly and spoke, calm but firm. "Son, the way you speak to your wife says more about you than any legal document ever could." Ethan scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be?" The old man's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disappointment. "Someone who taught lawyers what justice actually means." Ethan's colleague went pale. The folder slipped from his hands. In the next moment, Ethan would realize the old man he insulted was the one person powerful enough to end his career forever. The hallway fell unnaturally quiet. Ethan laughed once, sharp and uneasy. "You taught lawyers," he scoffed. "That's funny." "Security." Before he could finish, his colleague grabbed his arm. Ethan, the man whispered, voice shaking. Look at him. Really look. Ethan turned back, irritation written across his face. The old man had straightened, his tired posture gone. Though his clothes were simple, something about him suddenly felt immovable. The colleague swallowed hard. That's Arthur Hale. Ethan blinked. So? The man's face drained of color. So, Ethan, that's Professor Arthur Hale, founder of Hale and Benton. The man whose books you studied. The man whose portrait hangs in the firm's lobby. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The old man met his stare calmly. I don't usually introduce myself, he said. But since you asked, yes, I am that Arthur Hale. Ethan's knees weakened. Professor, he stammered. I didn't recognize you. Arthur Hale looked past him and gently placed a hand on Stella's arm. She recognized me when I almost fell, he said. That tells me everything I need to know. Ethan panicked. Sir, please, this is a misunderstanding. I was just stressed. Arthur's voice remained steady. You weren't stressed. You were cruel. The courtroom doors opened, and the bailiff called their case. Inside, the judge froze mid-step when he saw Arthur Hale. Professor? Hale, he said in disbelief. Arthur nodded slightly. I'm only here as support, Your Honor. That was enough. The hearing began. When asked about the asset claims, Ethan swallowed hard. He glanced at Arthur, then at Stella. I withdraw my claim, Ethan said quickly. All marital property should go to my wife. Stella's breath caught. The judge raised an eyebrow. Including the house? Yes, Ethan said, everything. Arthur finally spoke. Let the record show, he said calmly, that integrity matters more than status. The judge struck the gavel. Case closed. Ethan sat frozen, his pride shattered. Stella felt something she hadn't felt in years, relief. Outside the courtroom, Arthur handed Stella a small card. Your kindness paid its return, he said. Never forget that. But the greatest twist wasn't the courtroom victory, it was what awaited Stella after she walked out free. The courthouse doors closed behind Stella right. And for the first time in years, the air felt light in her lungs. The weight she had carried, fear, shame, self-doubt, had finally fallen away. She stood on the steps, blinking in the sunlight, hardly believing it was over. Ethan walked out moments later, his shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the ground. He didn't look at Stella. He couldn't. The man who once towered over her with arrogance now looked small, defeated not because he lost money, but because he had been exposed for who he truly was. Arthur Hale stood beside Stella, leaning gently on his cane. You handled yourself well, he said. Not with anger. With dignity. Stella swallowed hard. I don't know how to thank you. Arthur smiled. You already did. On the bus, they walked slowly toward the parking lot, where a sleek black car waited. A driver stepped out and opened the door for Arthur. Before leaving, Arthur pressed a simple card into Stella's hand. If you ever need work, advice, or help, call me. Honest people deserve opportunities. Tears filled Stella's eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. Why did you help me so much? She asked softly. Arthur paused. Because people forget something important, he said. Titles fade. Money disappears. But character always reveals itself facially in small moments. He nodded once and stepped into the car. Stella watched as it drove away, then looked down at the card in her hand. She wasn't just holding a phone number, she was holding proof that kindness had value. She took the bus home again, but this time, it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. At home, Stella opened the windows, letting sunlight fill the house. She made herself tea, sat at the table, and finally smiled, truly smiled. Her life wasn't over. It was beginning. Never measure people by their appearance or status. The smallest act of kindness can open doors you never imagined. And arrogance may rise fast, but it always falls harder. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that goodness always returns. Tell me in the comments, have you ever helped a stranger without knowing why it mattered?